You saw it coming, and you still weren't ready. One moment you were standing at the edge of the water, maybe tossing bread, maybe just watching. The swan was 20 feet away, calm, enormous, white, almost unreal in how still it sat on the surface. And then something shifted. The neck pulled back. The wings came up, both of them, spreading wider than you expected, wider than seemed possible for a bird. The hissing started, and it was moving toward you faster than anything that size should be able to move on water. Most people who have been charged by a swan describe the same thing afterward. Not fear exactly, something closer to disbelief. Because everything about a swan up until that moment suggests the opposite of danger. The gliding, the stillness, the way they appear in every painting and fairy tale as a symbol of grace and peace. And then one comes at you with its wings up and its neck stretched low and flat like something prehistoric. And none of that matters anymore. What you experienced in that moment was not random aggression. It was not a bird having a bad day. It was one of the most precisely targeted threat responses in the animal kingdom, aimed directly at you for reasons the swan understood completely, even if you did not. Here is what was actually happening. A mute swan, the species most people encounter in parks and ponds across North America and Europe, is not a small animal. A large male can weigh 30 pounds. His wingspan can reach 7.5 feet. He is the heaviest flying bird native to Europe, and when he decides that you are a threat, he brings every pound of that toward you with complete commitment. People have been knocked off their feet. A kayaker in Illinois drowned in 2012 after a swan repeatedly struck him and prevented him from swimming to shore. This is not a bird that is bluffing, but here is what most people never ask. Why? Why is this particular bird, in this particular place, so willing to escalate to that level? The answer begins with something you probably walked past without noticing. Somewhere nearby, in the reeds, under a low overhanging branch, tucked against the bank, there is a nest. Or there was one recently. Or there will be one soon. Because a swan's aggression is not a personality trait. It is a calendar. And that calendar runs on a timeline most visitors to a park or lakeside never think about. Mute swans pair for life. That is not a romantic exaggeration. It is a biological reality with significant behavioral consequences. A bonded pair returns to the same nesting territory year after year. The male, called a cob, begins defending that territory weeks before the female lays a single egg. He is not reacting to a threat that exists right now. He is preventing a threat from ever getting close enough to matter. By the time you see the nest, he has already decided that the entire surrounding area belongs to him, and that anything approaching it, you, a dog, another swan, a Canada goose, a kayak, a rowing boat, is a problem to be solved immediately and physically. The female, called a pen, sits on a clutch of 4 to 8 eggs for about 36 days. During those 36 days, the cob does not rest. He patrols, he monitors, he runs threat assessments on everything that enters his field of vision. Researchers who have studied mute swan nesting behavior describe the cob during incubation as operating in a state of sustained high alert that has no real parallel in most other birds. He is not occasionally aggressive. He is continuously primed, and the threshold for what triggers a full charge gets lower as the hatch date approaches. What you looked like to that swan, standing at the water's edge, facing the nest, your body turned toward it, was a predator taking a position. It did not matter that you had no intention of going near the nest. It did not matter that you didn't know the nest was there. The swan was not reading your intentions. It was reading your position, your size, your movement, and your proximity. And by every measure it uses to make that calculation, you were a threat. This is the part that most people find genuinely surprising. Swans do not have a single aggression setting. They have a sequence. It starts long before the charge, and most people miss every early step because they are not watching for them. The first signal is postural. The cob will turn to face you directly. This sounds minor. It is not. A swan that was feeding with its head in the water and pulls up, turns, and holds eye contact with you has already made a decision. It has assessed you as worth monitoring. You have entered a category. The second signal is the busking posture. The wings lift slightly from the body, arching upward and outward. The neck curves back against the chest. The bird looks, suddenly, much larger than it did a moment ago. This is not accidental. Every dimension of that posture is designed to maximize apparent size. The swan is showing you what it is capable of before it demonstrates it. The third signal is the hiss. Up close, a swan's hiss is not a quiet sound. It is a sustained, pressurized exhalation that carries across water and communicates one thing with complete clarity. I have decided you are the problem, and I am about to do something about it. Most people, by the time they hear the hiss, are already backing away. The ones who don't, or can't, see the charge. Here is what the charge actually is, biomechanically. A mute swan moving across water in full threat display is using its feet to generate speed while holding its wings fully extended for both stabilization and impact. When it reaches its target, the primary weapons are the carpal joints, the bend in the wing that corresponds roughly to a human wrist. A blow from that joint, delivered by a 30-pound bird at full speed, can bruise bone. It can knock an adult human backward. It can capsize a small watercraft. People who work regularly around mute swans, wildlife managers, park rangers, waterfowl researchers, treat a charging cob with the same seriousness they would treat any large animal in a territorial defense. And yet, the aggression is not indiscriminate. This is the detail that changes how you understand swans entirely. A cob that charges a human walking along the bank will ignore a great blue heron standing motionless in the shallows 50 feet from the nest. The heron is larger than most humans who visit that pond, but the heron is not moving toward the nest. It is not oriented toward the nest. It does not register as a threat by the calculation the swan is running. The swan is not aggressive toward everything. It is aggressive toward specific things in specific configurations, and that calculation is far more sophisticated than simple size or proximity. Cygnets, the young, change the dynamic again. Once the eggs hatch, the aggression of the cob does not decrease. It expands. Now he is not just defending a nest. He is defending mobile offspring that scatter, that drift, that create multiple points of vulnerability simultaneously. The pen, who during incubation was relatively calm, becomes aggressive in her own right after hatching. A family of mute swans with newly hatched cygnets is about as close to a no-go zone as you will find in a public park. Both parents are active, both are monitoring, and the threshold for a charge is at its absolute lowest. What most visitors do not know, what changes the entire encounter if you understand it, is that swan aggression follows a geography. There is a line, invisible but precise, that represents the boundary of what the cob has decided is his. Outside that line, he may watch you, may turn to face you, but he will not approach. Cross the line, and everything changes immediately. That line is not fixed. It shifts with the season, with the stage of nesting, with the number of people present, with whether you are moving or still, with whether you have a dog, with whether you approached from the water or the land. But it exists, and experienced observers can read it. The cob's body tells you where it is, if you know how to look. Stand still. Turn slightly sideways. Lower yourself if you can. Stop moving toward the water. Almost every time the display will de-escalate. Not because the swan has decided you are not a threat, because your behavior has changed the calculation. You are no longer presenting as a predator, taking a position. You are presenting as something uncertain, something pausing, something that has reconsidered. The Swan reads that too. There is a version of this story that gets told as a comedy. Tourists chased by an angry swan. The indignity of running from a bird. And it is true that the sight of a grown adult sprinting away from a white bird on a park pond has a slapstick quality to it. But the swan in that story is not being absurd. It is doing something with complete biological seriousness. It has a nest. It has eggs or cygnets. It has a mate it has been bonded to for years. And something large approached that. So it did what 10 million years of evolution built it to do. The grace you see when a swan glides across still water in the early morning is real. The violence you see when one charges across that same water with its wings up is also real. They are not contradictions. They are the same animal, in different moments of the same life, doing exactly what it is built to do. You just happen to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now you know why. If you have ever been charged by a swan or watched someone else get chased, tell me in the comments what happened. I read every one. And if you want to understand the other side of swans, the behaviors most people never see because they happen at dawn before anyone arrives at the pond, that is the next video. I'll see you there.